For some people, it's natural to have people over for a meal. For others, they don't know where to start, or they're filled with fear that some people won't like it, or they won't have enough, or whatever. In our house churches, we devote ourselves to the scriptures and to fellowship, to a common meal, and to prayer. In recent videos, I've talked about our approach to scripture, where we let the apostles speak, and about how we keep everything conversational so that everything is relational. And I said that I would speak next to how we do the common meal, and today is next. In Acts 2:42, it says the believers devoted themselves to the breaking of bread. Now, it's tempting to read that as a ritualized observance of the Lord's Supper, but I have three thoughts about that. First thought, in life, we eat with people to show acceptance of them. And we refuse to eat with people as a way of showing our disapproval of them. I'm sure there are people you would refuse to eat with: a child molester, Hitler, someone who mocks you regularly. We know instinctively that to sit down to a meal with such people feels like a betrayal of our own values. Now, I don't know if parents still do this, but it used to be that an unruly child would be sent to bed without supper as a discipline. To the child, it felt like being hungry, but where families still sit down to a meal together, it's a reminder that our actions have relational consequences. The Apostle Paul said of certain people, "With such a person do not even eat." The counsel was designed to communicate disapproval and invoke shame. As well, by implication, he was saying, with those people in good standing, eat, because it shows approval and removes shame. To say, let's eat, is to say, let's enjoy each other. So in our X242 microchurches, we eat together as a ritual, not a heartless ritual, but as heartfelt devotion. We devote ourselves to it. And we don't necessarily force it to be spiritual, meaning we don't expect it to carry any sort of mystical meaning other than just breaking bread together, eating together, enjoying each other, cultivating relationship together. That's the first thought. The second thought is about whether breaking bread together is supposed to be a ceremonial observance of or participation in the Lord's Supper. I think it can be, but I don't think it must be. Some of us see the Lord's Supper or communion as a sacrament that confers a grace upon the person who partakes of it. Others see it as an ordinance that we follow as an act of obedience. Jesus said, do it, so we do it. Now, I think most people, whether they see it as a sacrament or an ordinance, approach it with some expectation that they will experience something mystical in it. They'll feel closer to God or whatever. Some people do it every week. Some people do it once a year, I suppose. I personally believe that when Jesus said, whenever you do this, do it in remembrance of me, he was simply saying, from now on, whenever you observe the Passover, remember that I am its fulfillment. I don't think Jesus was setting up a ceremonial rite. I think he was interpreting a ceremonial rite, and an annual one at that. I mean, even if subsequent generations began to practice it as a ceremonial rite, and even if there's a long history of the church practicing it that way, I just don't think it was his intent. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. That said, I don't think it's wrong to do it more frequently. It can even be helpful. But as one who makes it a point to let the scriptures say what they say and not make them say anything they don't say, this is where I've landed on it. But if it's your conviction and conscience to celebrate communion in honor and obedience to Jesus, please do that. It is good to do that. It would be wrong to not do it. There is no harm in observing a ceremonial rite to honor the Lord. It's good. So that said, when we devote ourselves to the breaking of bread, as the first believers did in Acts 2:42, we simply break bread together. We share a meal together. We eat together at a common meal. And some of our groups also partake of a special time of communion, and that's good too. Either way, the act of simply breaking bread together is meaningful. It creates and nurtures relationship. And it would be unfortunate if we understated the value of that because it's not the ceremonial rite. So we enjoy a meal together. And that sets up the third thought, how we do it practically. In some of our groups, a person with the gift of cooking makes most of the meals. They might be the host or might not. Usually others give the person a break every now and then, and sometimes they just order pizza. Some of our groups share the responsibility more proactively, either taking turns providing the meal or coordinating who brings what each week in order to make a meal. And sometimes they just order pizza. One group went months eating tacos for lunch where everyone brought the same part of the course. One would bring the meat, another brings the beans, another the lettuce, another the taco shells, and one brought a bottle of wine. That worked well for them. One of our groups eats last because when they started meeting, it was on Sunday morning, so they had lunch when they were done. But most of our groups meet at a mealtime, like lunch or supper, so they eat first. In my experience, where there's not already friendships, I think it helps the meeting to be more relational if we start by eating together. It's just a different mindset than if we show up to a Bible study that will be followed by refreshments. Some of our groups have dessert of some kind. Some do it immediately after the meal before opening scripture. Others do it at the end after the scriptures and prayer. There's no rule, just whatever makes practical and meaningful sense. The goal is simply to share a meal together. Let the conversation flow. If you keep things conversational, it'll help everything be relational. And with that, I would just ask you, who have you recently shared a meal with? Not just a meal on the go, but stopping to break bread together with intentionality, even if you didn't say it that way. And if you're already meeting with people as a small group or a Bible study, consider adding a meal, not just as a convenience, but as one of your 4 devotions. It'll be good. Finally, we devote ourselves to prayer. I'll speak to that next time.